Hey, thanks everyone for good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Gosh, I wish I could hit a replay. For those of you that are watching, I kept looking, Reggie. I have this little preview button here, and I'm like, why don't I see? I usually see how many people are watching on Facebook.
Listen, today's a day for anything to happen.
Oh my gosh, what is today's date? So, my show is about helping first-time supervisors, managers, and leaders acclimate to the new position and to get over some hurdles, to help them with the fear they have, the hesitation they have. A lot of clients that I talk to, they just don't fit in anymore because I'm not one of the workers and I'm not one of the managers, and so I don't really know where I fit. And so I'm getting pressure from here and pressure from here, and so that, since I've been in that position many times, I have a certain love and compassion for them. I mean, I literally had a job one time when someone said, "Here's your desk. The boxes underneath are yours. Have a good day." And that was it. That was it. And so, really happy.
Ambiguity at its best, right?
Yep. Did you say ambiguity?
Ambiguity at its best.
Oh my gosh! When I was getting my master's degree in leadership, we had a 360, and dealing with ambiguity was one of my lowest scores. I couldn't deal with it, and now I've become much better. I've become much better with, like, well, it will happen, or it won't happen. And and Reggie, I met through LinkedIn somehow serendipitously, and I love his show, which is called Discover Your Other Self. And I love, he starts out with this really cool DJ guy with his voice is incredible, D Money, and he has on great speakers about finding, your true calling in life, what you're really meant to be, and who you're supposed to be, and do what you're supposed to be doing. So Reggie, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I want to tell anybody that's listening on LinkedIn, so we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube. Anybody can write a comment in the comment section of wherever you're listening, and I will see it here, and we can engage you in this conversation. Okay, Reggie, a little bit about yourself, and we can start talking about leadership whenever you want.
Sure. So, Joan, thanks again for having me on this show. I love your platform, love everything you're doing. Having the opportunity to talk to first-time leaders and helping them on that journey, because it's the first step in who they are going to become as a human being, because they're taking it up a different level. So I'm glad that you are facilitating these discussions. So kudos to you. So I am the host of Discover Your Other Self that Joan mentioned. It's a show that I host on LinkedIn where we talk about just life in general. I bring on a variety of different guests, and I will say, hey, let's have some real talk. Tell me about a time where you failed. Tell me about a time that you were challenged with life, and how did you overcome? And because of that, it gets people into a mode of just, hey, I could be myself. I could take the mask off. I could relax, and that's why I have the DJ there, just to kind of bring the vibes or positive vibes to the community. And what ends up happening is that you see, and you've seen it yourself, Joan, just a bunch of interaction, people in the comments commenting this and that and blah, 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 because that's a high energy and vibration that we want to bring. But in terms of what I'm trying to do here with you, and thank you again for this collaboration, but I do want to talk to the first-time leaders because it's super important. And I remember the first time that I became a people manager, and I remember, the butterflies in my stomach, right? And I hate using this term because it's super used like all the time, like imposter syndrome. Like I don't like that term. Like let's move away from that, okay? Because I just want to say you're going into new territory. You're building new muscle, because that's what it is. Eventually, you may not know something in that given time, just like going into this first leadership position, but you will learn, right? There's nothing about being an imposter syndrome. You're just trying something new. So when you transition, it's always important, and I'm going to put an asterisk besides the word important, to know how you were managed, right? And the reason why I put that asterisk there, Joan, is because some of us have had good leaders that we could use as a point of reference to, as an example of how we should lead a team. The alternative to that is some of us have had bad leaders. So that's why I put that asterisk there, because you don't want to take those traits from those bad leaders. However, there's an opportunity to learn from those bad leaders and apply it to the people that you will be managing. At the end of the day, it's about treating people the way that you want to be treated, with the understanding that everybody is also different. So you have to be able to extract what people need. Everybody has different strengths, weaknesses, talents, gifts. As a leader, it's your job to really pinpoint what those strengths are and put people into those positions to succeed.
Right. Well, it's interesting. You mentioned imposter syndrome, and from my research and the people that I deal with, that I coach, imposter syndrome is really high, meaning that I'm going to get found out. So the first time leaders that I deal with, they feel like I'm going to get found out, that I'm not qualified. I'm going to get fired if I make a mistake. They don't know how to have difficult conversations, dealing with difficult employees, and also difficult employees that you inherited from someone else who didn't do anything about it. So I know you have a list of things you want to make sure that you tell our first-time supervisors and managers. Do you want to start with that? Let's hear what you got on your list.
Yeah, so I got a list of things that you need to know. Like if this is a toolkit that I'm going to give you, inside this toolkit, we're going to open it up.
Need to know.
Yeah, we need to know. Beside the wrench, beside the drill, this is what you got. So you need to listen. Listen. I remember Simon Sinek, and he was doing a presentation on leadership, and he quoted a story told by Nelson Mandela, and how Nelson Mandela always remembered, back in the days in Africa where his dad was a leader, right, of the tribe, and he would and his father would always sit back and just listen to his peer, the people around him, the people that he was leading, because he wanted to understand, well, their point of view, wanted to understand their perspective, wanted to get a sense for their ideas. And I find that a lot of leaders don't do that, right? They like just to go out there first and say, "Well, I'm the leader, I'm the boss. This is how it's going to be done. This is how we're going to conduct ourselves. This is how we're going to execute. Here's the plan. That's it. It's gospel." But it doesn't have to be that way. I think as a collective, we have the opportunity to listen as a leader, listen to those new ideas that are being brought to the forefront, and then we could add value and refine those ideas by bringing our own unique experiences into that fold. But at the end of the day, you are allowing those other people to contribute. So we need to listen more.
Right.
Right.
That reminds me of Hamilton. I don't know if you saw Hamilton in person or the movie, but there's one part where Burr continually tells Hamilton, talk less, smile more.
Yeah, and, that's a good one too.
Just listen, stop talking. And some people say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen more than you speak. Yeah.
Yes. And we've all gone through it. Like people will just ramble. Sometimes you'll have leaders just rambling. You're just sitting there like, okay, are you going to stop? I get it. Right. So it's like, I need just the Coles notes. Right. So there's that. Number 1. 2, I would say, determine what your people's true ambitions are. We do not take the time to figure that out. What I mean by that is, you could have, let's say you're managing a team of 4, and you could have weekly one-on-ones. Yeah, you're going to be conducting business conversation, but what are the true ambitions of Stacy? I'm making up names. What are the true ambitions of Mark? Where do they want to go? Where do they want to be? What do they want to do when they grow up? So I've actually developed a framework, Joan, called the Time Matrix. Time stands for This Is Me. And it's a methodology that I put together because back in 19, I really wanted to figure out who I want to be when I grew up. And it's good just at any age. Because let's not forget, you could always reinvent yourself, right? That's the evolution. That's innovation. iPhone doesn't stop at the first iPhone. It reiterates itself every year or so, right? So with people, the framework is designed to showcase, well, what I don't want in my career in life. So you could list things like, I don't want a bad boss. I don't want to work for a company that doesn't align with my values, right? Top right-hand corner of this matrix, because it's a 4-box quadrant, I'll say what I do want out of my life and my career. Let's say I want to work for a boss that allows me to create. I want to work for a company that allows me to create an impact, not just on my organization, but the world. Maybe they, maybe they're aligned with a charitable organization, and I want to be able to help with those initiatives. Bottom left-hand corner, I would say, what are my superpowers, right? So what are my unique gifts and talents that I could leverage to get what I want? So I could be a kick-ass presenter, maybe I'm an Excel wizard, just making up examples. I know you make that face. I'm not one either, but there's no others out there, right?
And, or a good writer, or you're a good writer.
Yeah, or a good writer. You're absolutely right. So then bottom right-hand corner is this time next year. Now, when I take into account what I do want, when I take into account what my superpowers are, this time next year allows me to visualize, and this kickstarts the manifestation process, because now I've taken the time to sit down with myself and write all these elements down. Now I'm thinking about 1 year from now, what am I going to be, right? So maybe I want to get promoted to a director position, or a senior manager position. Maybe I want to, and I'm bringing life instances into this, and this is outside of COVID, but maybe I want to travel more. Maybe I want to go to like 2 or 3 different countries per year. But you're putting it down on paper so that you can make it realize, right? You're turning your vision into a reality, and you're holding yourself accountable. So as leaders, I've now have something concrete that I could visually look at, and I can look at the true ambitions of my employees and help keep them on that right track. So I'll stop there for a second. Go ahead.
Thank you. You know what I like about that is I often, when I tell people, when I actually ask people in a coaching setting, what do you really want? It could be on any situation, and they often can't answer it. So sometimes I like that you have, if I'm correct, you have one quadrant that says what I don't want. What I don't want, what I want, my superpowers, and this time next year. So sometimes I have my clients write a list of things they don't want. And then we come in it by the flank or from the other side. Like, so I don't want to be stuck in traffic. I don't want to have to take a car. Like I used to live in San Francisco. So in the San Francisco area. So people up there, they want to be able to take public transportation. I don't want to work weekends. And so then I like that you have both, because I always ask people the same 2 questions. What do you have that you don't want? What don't you have that you do want? And it kind of stops them, but they're just powerful questions. So I think that's great.
But you know what? They're so simple. What ends up happening every single time, and you probably have the same reaction when you take people through the series of questions that you ask. You know what? I never really took the time to think about that.
Yep.
Right.
And then part of my coaching philosophy is to give people permission. They've never really had permission to think. They just did the next indicated. I graduate from high school, I go to college, I do whatever my family does. The next thing I do that. Then the next thing, maybe I get married. And the next thing, maybe, I buy a house. Or do I even want any of this? Yep.
But that's part of the programming.
It's part of the programming, and it's been, the tape has been playing for a long time. So it's hard for anyone to even think about pausing the tape and thinking differently.
We're talking tape's been on like a loop and eyes have been peeled back. That's life, right?
And then good or bad, I don't think we have to throw, I think there has been so many people that come into our lives that may have said wrong things. I was just talking to a client yesterday who was told her curly hair her whole life was ugly. her whole life. Her mother would say it, and I'm like, but they didn't actually mean it. It hurt. So like when I go back into my childhood and stuff, some of the things people said were not meant to hurt me. It was their own fear that was talking. Their own fear that was like, man, your hair is messed up. We need to do something about your hair. But it came out the wrong way. And I interpreted it as a child. I heard it as a child. I interpreted it as a child. So now I ask people to step back and reframe, or is there anything else could have been meant by that? And now think of it as an adult instead of thinking of it as a 6-year-old.
It's true.
And so you call your matrix the time matrix.
Yeah. Time stands for this is me.
Oh, this is me. Okay. Okay. All right. So you don't have an E on it. Oh, this is me. Okay. The E, the M-E, because I was like, I have Tim. Okay.
See what I did to you?
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
That's pretty creative. Yeah.
That's a pretty face,
Kudos. Here. This is what I do with my clients all the time.
That was easy.
There we go.
Okay, so we have listen, determine what your ambitions are with the matrix. Did you have it?
Yeah, I got a couple others. Put people in places where they could succeed. Now you understand after you've done the time matrix with your person or people. Now again, you have something concrete that you could draw from to figure out, okay, well, where can I put them to succeed so that they can get what they want in their career? I'm not just going to put them into a position where it's just like, well, I have a need from a business function perspective and I need them to fill that gap. Then no, you're just putting what was it, a round peg into a square hole, right? So what's the point of that? Put people in places where they really could thrive and just drive at the end of the day, because you want to be able to drive results.
Oh, I love that. Thrive and drive.
Yeah. The other one is encourage growth. And what I'll say
before you go on to that one, that reminds me of Jim Collins in Good to Great. There's a leadership book called Good to Great by a guy named Jim Collins, and he says, get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus, and get the right people in the right seats on the bus. So some people don't need to get off the bus, but they're not in the right seat.
Not in the right seat.
Yeah. So that
we're so fixated on hitting a company objective. But people have to also realize that the company wouldn't be the company without the people doing the work for that company. So in order for that company to realize the results and to even scale and deliver better results, to your point in your analogy of the bus, put the right people in the right seats.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not rocket science, but it's just, again, remember we just said the programming, right? We just did that, right?
Yep. And as the first time leader, it may take you a while to figure some of this stuff out, but to what people go in what place. And I think, well, I'll wait to hear what number 4 or maybe 5 if you have it, but all roads lead back to listen.
Bingo.
Listen and watch and observe, especially when you first get to a job. I have told people, well, we're not sure if we can trust that person yet or not. So let's just wait. Let's get some more information. Or like, I want to change this procedure. I want to change that procedure. I'm like, you've been there 2 months. No, let's just write that down as maybe something in the future. But let's just see. Let's keep continuing to observe and watch. Of course, if something is urgent, change it. But, people hate when a new person comes in and you're changing things immediately.
Exactly. People don't like change, right? But they forget that change is constant. So there's that.
Change is constant. Misery is optional.
Yes. So the final 2 is encourage growth. Now, like any buzzwords, we talked about one buzzword, which is imposter syndrome, right? The other buzzword I would say when it comes to growth is everyone says, I want to grow. I want to work for an organization that promotes growth. But are you ready for growth? Growth comes with that word you said, change. Change also comes with, well, or I should say growth also comes with the idea of doing something that you are uncomfortable with doing, right? Means stepping outside of your comfort zone. If you could answer the question about whether or not you are ready to step out of your comfort zone, then I would say that you are ready to grow. Because if you're not, and you're like, oh, this is too hard, I don't have the work ethic, then you're just going to be complacent and stagnant within your career. So always encourage growth, but always ask the question, are you ready for what it takes to actually realize that growth? Because there's a lot, right, that goes into that.
Yeah. And what I'll say on that is, and I know you have to get off in a couple minutes, that goes also for the first time leaders. Like a lot of the clients I work with have a hard time saying no and delegating.
Yes.
So they're overwhelmed because they haven't been able to delegate or to say no. So encourage growth. What I'm hearing you also say is that encourage your employees to grow. Instead of coming to me with questions, how about if you come to me with a question and 2 solutions? How about if you think of something before you come?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So I like that. Engagement. Engagement is key. Weekly one-on-ones.
Definitely.
Touch points. And it's just 3 questions. It's like, how are you? Because at least, you know, that takes care of the human aspect. But you have to genuinely mean it. Like, how are you? How are you today? What are your priorities? How may I help? 3 questions during your one-on-one.
I love it. That feels very safe.
Very safe.
Yeah, it feels like I can. You're building trust. Yeah. So that's so wonderful. How are you? What are your priorities this time period? If you meet once a week, whatever you meet.
Yeah.
And how may I help you?
Yeah, just don't dive into work. It's like, okay, I'm a human being too, right? I'm a human being first, right? Ask the question. It's a simple question. I can tell you either I'm doing well or I'm feeling like shit.
Have you ever done the disc profile?
I've done a disc profile, yeah.
And you
have don't ask me to quote my my number or which one am I? I can't remember.
Yeah, I would say you're an I because I'm an I. I'm an I, yeah. And anyway, that makes me think of the D's would be like, can we just get to it? Okay, you have to go. So what do you want to leave us with? One more pearl of wisdom? And how can people get a hold of you if they want to talk with you more?
I want to actually touch upon what you said in terms of being able to delegate, which I think is very important. I'm glad that you brought that up. And I'll leave this as my last tidbit is, you know, a lot of first-time leaders are promoted based on their individual contribution, right? That doesn't mean that they're actually great leaders, right? The great leaders are the ones that are actually able to foster and build relationships. So what I would encourage you to do, and this is even if it's your first job, all the way through your career, it's about fostering and cultivating relationships because that's going to carry you throughout your entire journey. But especially from a first-time leader perspective, you need to think about, well, how am I going to establish, build a rapport, and build trust with the people that I'm going to be leading, but in a safe manner that is going to just lead us into victory, because at the end of the day, we're here to work together. In terms of where you could get a hold of me, simple and easy, LinkedIn. Or if you dial 911, just hit extension 4. You can get a hold of me that way too.
Does that work in the United States? Because I know you're in Canada.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, sorry. You're right, Joan. So
Uh-huh.
that's extension 4 in Canada, extension 5 in the US.
Okay, thank you. I thought, because I know I've dialed it a couple times.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for being on my show, and I'm probably going to stay on and just kind of regroup and go over all that you told us.
Awesome.
And I'll be seeing you soon.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Joan. Appreciate you.
Okay, bye.
Everyone.
All right. I'm not sure if anyone's still out there listening, but I thought I would just take a couple more minutes to go over what Reggie has given us 5 what he thinks are really good tips for first-time supervisors and leaders. And the first one is to listen. And I think that's so true. To just, there's this thing called WAIT, WAIT, why am I talking? And hey, Jeff, thanks for joining. Yeah, to just listen more than you're speaking. There's an old saying that says something like, it's better to keep, these are my words, this is not what it actually says, but it's better to keep your mouth shut and let people think you're a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. So that's something I grew up with too, speak less. And I love that. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here. In Hamilton, where he says, where Burr is continually telling Hamilton, talk less and smile more, but he just doesn't get it. The next thing he told us was to determine your ambition, what your ambitions are. And he has a matrix that he calls This Is Me. And the 4 quadrants are what I do want, what I don't want, what your superpower is, and this time next year. And he helps people. He says that will really help first-time supervisors and managers get their ambitions, and it'll kickstart the manifestation process, is what he actually said. Put people in the right places to succeed so that they can thrive and then drive. And I think that is so important. And that reminded me of Jim Collins' book. If you've read Jim Collins' book on leadership called Good to Great, and he talks about, he uses the analogy of a bus, and he says, get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus, get the right people in the right seats on the bus. So sometimes an employee that is underperforming in one category may thrive in another category. The fourth thing he says is encourage growth. And I was saying that one way for that I help first-time leaders encourage their own growth is to delegate and to say this really horrible, long, short word, no. I will say, how hard is it for you to say no? And they just like crumble. They just go, I can't do it. I can't do it. And a lot of us were raised with, if you want it done right, do it yourself. And everyone is incredibly busy. So sometimes people are just too busy to even think about delegating. But just meeting with an employee and telling them that, like, I'm human and this is what I need, but I don't even have the time to fully explain it to you, that is giving them the growth opportunity. And the first-time leader is getting a growth opportunity also, because they're stepping out of their comfort zone also. And then the fifth piece of advice he gave us was to have engagement. And he says a weekly one-on-one, which I totally agree with, weekly one-on-one. And he keeps it down to 3 questions, which I really like. How are you to start? What are your priorities? And how may I help you? And I thought that was just fantastic that he says those things every time, so that every time you meet with, as a first-time supervisor, if you're listening, this is really good for you to just have it every week. I'm going to ask you, what are your priorities? What are your priorities for this week? I personally might add for the next week, how did you do with your priorities last week? But that everybody knows what to expect. They're coming into the meeting with, it's always scary to meet with your supervisor. And when you are a supervisor, we forget that. And let's see what Jeff has to say. If you don't take the time to really know your people, then getting them in the right seat will be difficult. Absolutely. And then, like, when you're asking people, what are their true ambitions, and what do you really like about your job? What don't you like about your job? I hear people saying that to employees, and the employee is too scared to say, I don't like my job. Does that mean I'm going to get fired? So there's lots of ways to find out. There's lots of ways to find out. And Reggie ended up talking about, ended his show talking about fostering relationships. And so, Jeff, it gets back to what you're saying, that you need to know the right people. You need to get to know your people to see which seat they need to get in, And he said, at one point, and to thrive and drive. And I really like that. He said, you want them to thrive, and you want them to just drive their own bus, drive their own job after they have been given the tools they need. That's really my recap on Reggie. He has a show called Discover Your Own Self on LinkedIn. Just friend him on LinkedIn, and you'll get a lot of information from him. And if nobody has any other questions or comments, I'm going to end a little early. And thanks for joining me. It's been another great show, a great opportunity for me to just step out of my comfort zone and encourage my own growth. And those of you that joined at the end, we were talking for about 5 or 7 minutes. I was introducing him, telling everyone about myself, and I did not hit the go live button, so we had to start all over again. And all right, Elizabeth says, have them read 3 signs of a miserable job if they are scared to tell you if they are not happy. Elizabeth, is that a book or an article? I have seen stuff like that on LinkedIn, and I have seen like 3 or 5 signs you should leave your work, or things like that. 3 signs of a miserable job. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everyone all around the world that tuned in, reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's my main social media platform. And hit me up with any other questions you have about being a first-time supervisor or manager. And we'll be here next week, 10:30, Tuesdays, live with another guest that's going to talk to us about the trials and tribulations of being a first-time leader. Okay. Bye-bye.